Welcome back to chuckfuruya.com. Joining us for the... Oh, shit.
What?
Keep that in.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
Welcome back to Chuck Furuya Uncorked. Joining us for this week's episode is the lovely Christine Gomez. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, all these years I've been doing wine tastings and these special wine dinners at Vino, and Christine and her sister and her
all
husband,
their friends.
yeah, and also her husband, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I invite him.
Yeah, they would show up, and they were really, you could see it in her eyes. She had this real fascination. She wanted to learn about the world of wines. And what you just mentioned, that she was a bartender at one time who you used
Long
to work
time,
with.
yeah.
So,
She was my boss at my first bar gig.
now, in addition to that, she has been trying some of the wines from our podcast recommendations, and some she liked, maybe some she didn't care for, but it's still exploring and gathering information. So we wanted her insight and her perspectives on the world of wine and the enjoyment of wine. So, what do you think?
So we did a staff training at Buzz's Steakhouse, the restaurant that I work at, a couple weeks ago. And we wanted to incorporate, he broke it down to our management team, like a 101, not necessarily a 101, but explaining how wine, can affect a restaurant's culture and just explaining the world of wines on a level that I think is interesting for everybody here. And you work for Hawaiian Airlines and you're into wine and you've worked in the service industry. So we thought that it'd be a beneficial, like you'd be the perfect person to do this with on a podcast. And
Well, I want to know what she wants to learn first.
Well, first, I'm glad for the invite. Thank you. Well, as I've always wanted to learn from Chuck, is just, everything that he knows and how that can relate to how I drink wine and how I can better choose wine that I like to drink or identify wine that I would like. And so, that's sort of always what I took from anything you had to say, or not even just Chuck, but any sort of place where I would taste wine, like at a wine tasting at a winery or the bartender at a bar, trying to pick up and being able to identify what I taste because I like it. So then later I can go buy that wine or
share it with people.
And, that kind of thing.
So what are some good sources that you found, whether it's restaurants or stores, in your search of interesting wines?
Well, admittedly, I don't always go to specialty wine places, and I am a very Times, Safeway,
What's convenient?
Target
Right.
shopper primarily. And I do get a lot of my wines from there. So, one of my questions would be too, even how do you navigate a grocery store aisle type place where it's not Tamura's even, where it's not Wine Times, where it's not,
Fujioka,
or Arfield or wherever, and trying to be able to pick out of all of the big name, common name wines, that I would like or that somebody else would like because they have a preferential taste for a certain tasting note, region, or whatever.
So, as we have said in previous podcasts, just to bring you up to speed, from my point of view, one of the biggest criteria of why these big box stores carry wines is based upon how many times it scans a week. So what that means is how many bottles are sold. If X amount of bottles aren't sold, it's out and a new brand comes in, whether it's olive oil, soap, or shampoo. So that's one of the main criterias of why these big box stores carry the wines that they do. It's pretty labels, it's awards, it's price ranges, whatever the case may be. If you want the specialty kind of wines, you have to find, in my opinion, someone that's got the passion for those wines. And then you just got to pick their brains. You got to develop a connection, a rapport, so that that they may have it this week, or they may have another suggestion for you this week.
And you can trust the recommendations.
Yes,
essentially.
and you got to find that that 1, 2, 3 stores,
That's true.
that can provide that for you. And what I found is, a lot of these stores, these specialty stores, their wine selections do not overlap that much. So if you want Italian wines, you go here. And if you want these Southern French wines, you go here. You know, if you want Spanish wines, you go here. If you want California wines, you go here. Each one offers a different specialty, in my opinion. It's not better or worse. They offer different selections, you know, different niches, different categories, different price ranges, and all that stuff. So the first thing I would say is just I develop a course. So Cully and I went to a store in Kailua this past week, and I bought 2 bottles of wine there because I couldn't believe they had it.
What store was that?
Our field in Kailua. So I just couldn't believe they had the wine. So I had to buy it. You know, it was so cool. So, you know, every store, and at the same time when I was at Fujioka's, I bought a couple of bottles of wine the last time. I think it was 4 bottles of wine because they had these things that I was like, wow, that's really cool. You know, so you just got to shop around. It's like, you know, if I want tomatoes, you can't just go to one store nowadays. You know, if you want really good tomatoes or you want really good fish, you got to shop. So for fish, I go all the way to Nico's,
Right.
you know, their little store. Because, man, when they're on, the swordfish and the monchong there is like no place else, man. I mean, it's so fresh and vibrant looking, and it tastes fresh.
So I think to better answer your question, he's saying
There is no direct answer.
yeah,
and
I mean to make the
probably-
drive,
yeah.
you know. And
And-
that's a
and-
part of your wine journey is searching things out and finding where to find things and like you said, forming that rapport with whoever your local wine buyer is and
Yeah, I just need to be a regular, like a bar regular, but
So-
a wine shop regular.
and stock up so you don't have
Yeah.
to keep driving, you know.
So Melissa and Fred live on the North Shore. They save up and they drive the 1 hour once or twice a week, once a week or once every other week down to Kailua to buy their stash of wine and drive back up because they know that guy. He knows their palate and he recommends things accordingly, and they try all these different wines. So Cully, he'll go to Fujioka's, he'll go to Tamura's, he'll go to our field wine company, all of the above in search of wines, you know. And then when he sees something that perks his interest, or he ends up talking to one of the guys and they recommend this thing, that's how you find wine.
Or I raid my dad's cellar too.
Oh,
You know?
okay, that's always a good option
Yeah.
that I don't have.
So, Christine, so just to give you some basis, just based upon what we did in tastings in the past, Cully's suggesting that I kind of talk you through this whole levels of categories of wines to maybe help you to understand moving forward. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so I'll start with that. And again, this is just my point of view. And for me, I like to categorize wine so that I can understand it better. You know, so I like to put things so that I can remember it, you know, moving forward, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is depending on what you read, there's somewhere between 800 and a few thousand different grape varieties.
That's a lot.
Yes.
And
So,
that's a
in
huge
other
difference
words,
between 8,000 and 10,000.
yeah,
Yeah.
10,000.
10,000, yeah.
It's 2,000.
and so-
Unknowns.
And so the whole point of the story is that if you look at another fruit like mango, you have Hayden mango, common mango, Piri mango, Chinese mango, to name 4. Even though they're all mangoes, they taste completely different, have different weights, textures, etc.
Very true.
Okay, so therefore, if that's true, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Zinfandel, Pinot Noir, Carignan, Riesling, all of these are names of different grapes. And they should all taste different. They have different weights, textures, etc. Right? Is that true?
Right.
And so that's the first thing that I try to remember is what's the grape that's used to make this wine? Okay?
Okay.
So the second category that I'd like to discuss is that when I look at foods, when I go to a restaurant, I try to understand what fish are they using. There's a big difference between manchong and mahi-mahi, right? There's a big difference between what's the other thing? Oh, lamb and beef, right?
Okay.
So different flavors, different textures, et cetera.
Different preparations.
No, but that's different. I'm just saying, just the item itself. So understanding what is the type of tomato, what is the lamb, what is the beef, you know, whatever. So therefore, in my analogy on wines, what is the grape? Understanding there's thousands potentially of different grape varieties. they'll help me understand and remember what that wine is. Okay?
Okay.
So what is the grape?
So what kind of grape?
Yes.
And what is the grape?
Yes.
Okay.
So the second thing I would then focus on is that in my food analogy, my favorite type of restaurant to eat back when was sushi. And my favorite type of fish back when to eat was hamachi. Where we traditionally got fresh hamachi from was Japan. Because the water is so cold there, the hamachi is very fatty. It's fatty to keep itself warm. The other place where we get fresh hamachi from, or we can, is Australia. Because the water is warmer there, the hamachi is leaner. It's not as fatty. So hamachi grown in a cold climate, hamachi grown in a warm climate, results in a very different fish, even though it's the same fish. Similarly, Chardonnay grown in a cool climate, Chardonnay grown in a warm climate, results in a very different grape, even though it's the same grape. You understand?
Yeah.
So understanding where it's grown is very critical. So another example is, you take the same mesclun salad mix seeds. You grow it at Nala Farms. What was once Nala Farms. It's flat. It's hot. It's by the ocean. The greens are very pungent. They're very firm. They're very crunchy. They're very strong flavored. You take those same seeds and you plant it up in Camuela on the Big Island, high elevation, misty, rainy all the time, right? Cooler. Those same seeds results in very different greens. They're limper, they're milder, they're softer. Even though it's the same seeds, it's different because of the growing area.
Right, a product of your environment.
Exactly.
Obviously.
So similarly, that's what I look for when it comes to grapes. Where is it grown? And therefore it helps me to understand that if it's a warm climate, the Chardonnay will be more like this, probably, typically. I can't generally specifically say all the time, but generally this is what I'm expecting. Whereas from a cooler area, this is what I would expect. You understand? So where it's grown is very critical. Then my chef and food analogy, then understanding who the chef is. So I take a piece of fish, I cut it in half. I give one piece to D.K. Kodama, I give one to Alan Wong. Even though it's from the same fish, depending on what the chef wants to do, will result in a very different dish.
Correct.
Even though it's from the same fish.
But they could use different ingredients or
Exactly.
Different
So,
preparations.
cook it
Yeah.
a different way.
so having said that, I could take 2 bunches of grape from the same vine, give one to one winemaker, one to another winemaker. Even though they're from the same vine, depending on what the winemaker wants to do, it's going to result in a very different wine.
Correct.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's one of my formulas, therefore. Identify the grape,
Okay.
understand where it's grown from, and then who's the winemaker.
Okay.
So that's another way of categorizing wines for me.
And from there, you take what you like based on that, and that's how you find then your.
Yeah, that's how you memorize. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how you remember things categorically, as opposed to, I like the label now, it's so pretty, or, I like the perfume of this one. I'm trying to give you lingo so that when you go to a store or a restaurant, you can better communicate to that person what you're looking for.
His thing is he has a method, when he talks to me about studying wine, is you have to have a methodology instead of just I'm going to study a little bit of this, but then I'm going to jump over here, and trying to memorize random facts, where he's breaking it down to simplify it a little bit.
That's true, and that'll help you memorize better, I think.
Yeah.
Being so
Methodical.
methodical.
Hey, you must have gone to Moana Lua High School or something like that, huh?
Oh my gosh! Don't say the year.
Abraham Lincoln was president. Okay, so that's the second category or formula I have.
Okay.
The third category I would put on, or topic I would discuss with you, is I like to look at wines and break it down to Old World and New World. Okay? New World includes California, Washington, Oregon, Australia, New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, South Africa, to name some. Those countries tend to name their wines after the grape variety. Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Malbec, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon, etc., right?
Right.
So in most cases, when you smell and taste a New World wine, you're going to smell essence of the grape variety. So in the case of Chardonnay, maybe apple, pineapple, pear. In the case of Cabernet Sauvignon, blackberry, black currants, plums, etc., right? That's what you're going to smell. It's not better or worse. It's just what it is. It's characteristics that come from the grape variety itself. Okay. In the old world, in comparison, and this is generally speaking, that includes France, Italy, Germany, Greece, Spain, Portugal, Austria, to name some countries. Those countries, in many cases, tend to name their wines after the place, not the grape variety.
No, the region where they're grown.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. That's the point. Is they name where it's grown, and so in those cases, especially at the top level, you really don't smell so much essence of the grape variety. You don't smell apple, pineapple, pear only. You don't smell black cherry, black plum, blackberry all the time. What you smell is essence from the dirt that the vines grow in. So to me, it's the concept of the kula onion. There's something very unique about Kula Maui that results in a special onion. Neighboring Makawao and the rest of Maui, for that matter, the onion's not as special. I don't know why, but I'm sure it has something to do with the soil. So it's more place-driven
Right.
than
And-
grape variety-driven or winemaking-driven. You got it? And so that's another category. So is the wine New World in style or is it more Old World? And again, that's just generally speaking. There's always exceptions. There's a lot of people in the New World that are making Old World style wines. I'm not trying to blanket and say it's 100% true. It's not. But I'm just trying to give you something to work from so that you can say I like a more New World style wine. I like a new Old World style
So a
wine.
New World style wine would be like more fruit upfront, fruit driven when you smell.
Okay, so
and
like
taste.
that folk machine parts and labor that you liked.
Right.
That's
That she
more New
didn't
World.
like.
Oh,
That you didn't
I just
like.
did not prefer it
Yeah.
as much.
But
It's
but
okay.
That's more New World, and then this wine you'll see is more Old World. You're gonna smell dirt. You're gonna smell funky. It's funky. In fact, when you finish that wine, I'll go ahead and pour it. But I'll show you specifically what that difference is.
Okay.
Fourth category. There is two categories of wines that I like to try to decide what style of wine is happening when I taste the wine. One is called the trophy wine, and the other one is what I call the country wine or the cafe or bistro style wine. Okay, the trophy wine is those that are big, opulent, grand, sophisticated, lavish, majestic, and they belong in a cellar for 20, 30, 40 years before they have a chance to resolve themselves. And they're typically quite expensive. Okay. The category I tend to look for, especially for a neighborhood restaurant like Vino, is what I call country or cafe styled wines. Okay. So when you go to a cafe or a bistro along the Mediterranean, people aren't sitting there swirling their wine in their glass going, "Ugh." They're sitting there eating their food and they're gulping their wine with their food, just like we gulp fruit punch, soda pop, iced tea in America with our lunch, correct?
Correct.
So it's a beverage. It's something meant to be washed down the food. It's not thinking.
It's a way of life for them.
Yeah,
There too,
it's a way of life. It's not something intellectual or cerebral. It's just pure enjoyment. And so I therefore, because Vino is so neighborhood and a little more casual, that's the kind of wines we want to serve.
Right.
Right.
It's more approachable,
Yes,
I guess, in that
exactly.
sense.
Well, less pretentious.
Yeah,
Like you're
that's-
saying, yeah. Like you
And
don't have
so-
to swirl it around your glass
Yeah.
and be a snob.
And just to be clear, though, one style is not better than the other style.
They're just different.
They're just different, and I try to look at the wine so that I can understand what the wine is trying to say by determining whether it's a trophy style wine or whether it's meant to be a more country style wine.
How
like
do you know
like
that?
Chris, like those two wines over there that are unopened from Washington State, those are more trophy style wines.
And
just to let you know.
can identify a trophy style wine how?
Just when you smell and taste it.
Okay, so you wouldn't know just by looking at the bottle.
No, not necessarily. But
year,
usually, if
maybe.
it's $40 or up, it's probably
Okay,
more a
so
trophy
very
style wine.
Price point driven.
Right.
Okay.
And then the final
That's
thing
a
I
good
just want
question.
to, the final, and we can address that later as we taste through this wine. Remind me, okay?
Remind them, Christine, because I'm going to forget.
Okay.
The final category that I'd like to discuss or offer to you some insight into is food compatibility. Right? So I could take a piece of fish and I cut it into three parts. The center fish cut, I'm going to use salt, pepper, and a little bit of butter. The one over here to my left, I'm going to use salt, pepper, and a marinara sauce, Italian marinara sauce. The one on the right, I'm going to glaze it with teriyaki, So sweet, salty, teriyaki, right?
Okay.
So even though it's the same fish, because of the preparations, I got to think differently when I'm pairing wines with each of them. They all require different wines. With the butter, that's Chardonnay. You know,
Because butter and butter.
butter is fat, so it goes with something big like Chardonnay. It tastes butter that way.
Oh, I like buttery Chardonnays.
Hey, what do you call a fish with no eye, by the way?
Fish.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you. Okay, now the one with the marinara sauce. Marinara is earthy and it's high acid. So that's where the Mediterranean style wines come in because they're more earthy and they're more higher in acid. They're not smooth like the California
old
wines.
world.
Yes.
Ah.
Typically. Or it could be those kind of styles from California or Washington as well, Oregon. And then with the teriyaki, because it's sweet and slightly salty, and in some cases slightly spicy, I want something lower in alcohol because what those components buck heads with, what it clashes with, is oak, alcohol, and bitterness, to name three. It makes oakiness and bitterness taste super, super bitter, and it makes alcohol taste glaring. So I want something 9.5 alcohol as opposed to 13 or 14. So understanding the preparation, then I can approach the possible pairings in a more methodical way.
Right. So does a higher alcohol content always reflect its way in the taste, or would you ever have a high alcohol wine that doesn't taste alcoholic?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I don't know how to answer that. So in this day and age, because of the warming of the planet,
Oh, okay.
there's all these people that
going on?
are trying to solve the alcohol content of trying to make sure that it's not too high in a wine because then it's not balanced. So there's all these different techniques that are being used out today, and I don't know, man. I don't know. That's like doctoring something. That's like changing something. So I don't know. So
But so for her question, is something that has like 16% alcohol, the alcohol gonna stand out?
it depends. Sometimes, like I've had wines that are 14 and 15 degree alcohol that I didn't think were that high in alcohol when I first tasted it, because there's so much intensity in the wine, so much concentration that is built up even more to balance out the high alcohol content. If you just have a normal wine that has high alcohol, that
Then
alcohol
you'll
will poke
taste
out.
it. I see.
But there's people that it's like, I'll tell you something. One time we did this event in Paso Robles. We did a taste of Hawaii with Hawaiian Airlines, as a matter of fact. And it was during one of our lulls in our economy and therefore tourism in Hawaii. So we decided to do a promotion of Hawaii, a taste of Hawaii in Paso Robles, California, because it's halfway between San Francisco and LA. And we invited all the, the travel agents up and down California to come to this event, hoping only hand sell ones, not the big ones, just the hand sell ones, hoping that we can drum up more interest in people coming to Hawaii during that time. And Hawaiian Airlines helped us put this on.
Gosh,
and I
my
remember,
invite must have been lost in the mail.
huh?
This is before your time.
I
right?
know,
Exactly.
probably.
This was 20 years ago, girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
You weren't old enough to drink then.
Or maybe
Yes.
she was.
No, she wasn't.
No.
Okay, so I remember we're in the middle of nowhere. And I remember one of the chefs put a little bit too much heat inside their dish. And Chef Roy Yamaguchi was perturbed by that because it's not wine friendly when it has too much heat. So he sent this guy to go to all the supermarkets up and down to buy all this lobster and shrimp and whatnot that he could find, because it was a seafood sauce. And he sat there all day adding more lobster and more shrimp and more shells
Roy
inside.
did?
Yeah. And he just kept mixing it. And what he did was, because the heat was high, by adding more richness and more savoriness to the thing,
Balanced.
it balanced out the heat. That's what he did. It's similar with wine. If you can make the wine have really good concentration, whatever, to the point where you really don't notice that the alcohol is 15 something, then it's okay.
Okay.
So just to answer your question,
Well,
there's
that's a
different
good
ways.
analogy.
There's
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
ways of doing things like that. Okay, so you ready for this wine?
Oh, yes.
So that's the 5 categories that I dream up in my mind, right?
Okay. Let me see if I can recap
Yes.
maybe. the type of grape.
No! I'm
Right?
just joking.
Oh gosh. The the type of grape, where it's grown. Is it old world or is it new world? I think I skipped a few because.
Who's the winemaker?
Yes.
yeah.
That was going to be my last one, but then I'm short one. How it's made and who's the winemaker, because that sort of drives the end result.
So it's the grape,
right.
it's where it's grown, who's the winemaker, right?
Yep. How it's grown? No.
No, where it's
No.
grown. And then we talked about old world, new world.
Right.
Then we talked about country versus trophy.
That's
And
what
then
it
we talked
was.
about food and wine.
That's right. Cafe versus trophy wine.
There you go. Okay, so I'm you're not going to know this wine, but look at the color. Well, all these wines, the wine that you were drinking on earlier was black.
Correct.
Hey,
Ooh.
hey guys, can you bring your glasses over here?
It is a lot.
Our buddy
lighter.
Chris and Luke, our buddies Chris and Luke are over here, man. This is all part of a get together, man. This place is Chris's place. It's so cool, man. I feel at home here.
Yeah, it is nice. It's very not intimidating at
Here,
all.
toast.
I tried.
Should I want toast
Cheers.
you?
This is Barnyard Central.
You smell it? It's
I do.
funky.
It
You guys
is.
smell it? It's funky, yeah. Look at Chris's face, man. So that's downright rank, right?
Almost rubber. I don't know. I don't even know if that's a real tasting smell.
Rubber, I
Is
don't know.
that?
It's a tasting smell for sure. That is delicious.
Oh, I actually really like this.
Uh-oh.
This wine's
I-
pretty cool, huh?
Christine's into Barnyard now.
I guess so. That just goes to show that you cannot discriminate just because you don't like one barnyard style wine. You might not.
Well, I
you
think
might
that's a
necessarily
point
not
on
like it all.
on wine in general is to be more open, like like you're saying, that you can't just like Merlot or just like
Right.
Grape,
Yeah, or maybe you can't say I don't like Monchong because you didn't like it the one time it was
Yeah.
prepared.
Exactly,
You can try
yeah.
it again, and you might like this sort of preparation next.
Okay, so just break this down for you. Okay, so let's talk, before I give you all the technical information, tell me what you smell and taste here. I mean, what is this wine trying to say, rather than trying to diagnose whether it smells like cherries or whatever? What is this wine trying to say? You think this is a trophy style wine?
No.
No, I definitely don't think
Right.
so.
When would you enjoy a wine like this?
Actually, probably like I feel during the day,
Yeah.
and not even necessarily with food or with dinner. I would just drink it if I wanted a drink in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Or
But just by itself in a
Just-
glass.
yeah, doesn't need to have food with it or anything.
So this style of wine, because it's so fruity, I would also serve it a little more chilled than I normally would with other red wines. So I would like to serve this wine like 55 degrees, which means probably 12 minutes in your refrigerator before you pop the cork.
Okay.
Okay? Just because of the style, I want to heighten, I want to accentuate the fruity perfume, enticing loveliness of this wine, by serving it at a cooler temperature.
I actually tend to also chill my red wine generally.
that's good.
Have you drank it on the rocks yet?
No, unless sangria counts. No, huh? Okay.
No, okay, so when you do the red wines on the rocks, as he mentioned, this is not one of them.
No, okay.
But when you do it, you have to have the right ice cube, because if it melts too fast, then it dilutes the wine. You
I
don't
was
want
going
that.
to say this. I feel like putting ice in this would dilute this.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're right.
Very much.
You're
yeah.
right. And there's no need for that.
What is this wine, by the way, first of all?
I know, but I just want to get her opinions before I prejudice her at
Well,
all.
I mean, really, just drinking it, there is no. It doesn't taste alcoholic, period. So I don't know even if it's a lower alcohol wine. Now that
Yeah.
we've already talked about that earlier, but
I'd say it's 13.5.
which is normal. So that's.
Oh, you're right. It's only 10.5 alcohol.
Oh.
Look at
Right
that!
on.
I already learned one thing.
You know why?
I could probably go
think
home
of in
soon.
terms of balance. She thinks about it in terms of she didn't get her money's worth. There's only 10.5 alcohol.
No, but it is really like balance. At the end, I could immediately take another sip. There's no alcohol. There's no pucker. I don't know if the word is. It's not. There's no tannins that you really taste.
There's no tannins, yeah.
Yeah.
So it is really actually really drinkable. Like you would
and delicious.
You could probably drink the whole bottle.
This is the definition of a country style wine. then.
Absolutely for me.
So that's why he's saying it's quaffing. Like you just want to keep going, you know?
You just want to keep drinking. And, you know, you didn't hear the previous podcast, but, you know, our daughter Melissa on the North Shore, the way she coins it is she says, she starts drinking at 4 or 5 today now that she's a parent.
PM.
Yeah.
But she wants to be able to watch the 10 or 11 o'clock news.
Oh, yeah.
So rather than pounding down drinks, sipping on something like this, it's like slowly,
Yeah.
True.
you know, relaxing. And my wife likes to drink these kind of wines when she's cooking.
No, I mean, I like to drink wine when I cook as well. You know, the drinking wine window is short when you have kids. And me, I can't even stay up till 10, so, you know, my window's even smaller.
You can't stay up to
No,
10?
I you know, I sleep at 8:30, so
Whoa.
Whoa.
That is,
the wine window is small.
Wow, that's an interesting one. Okay, so now what do you think about the wine before I go into it?
I think it's great. I've never really smelt a very barnyardy wine before. You know, Melissa guys talk about that a lot, and this is my first experience with that. I think it's super balanced. It's super light. Yeah. When do you like to drink wine, by the way? Or when do you drink wine? And do you drink beer or liquor anymore? Or?
You know, I primarily drink wine, I'd say, lately, or, you know, for the last couple of years. I don't typically drink beer anymore. Unless I don't know, I just maybe have an inkling to have a Guinness one day, but that I'm not normally a Coors Light or a Bud Light drinker. You know, seltzers were in for a little while, so, you know, I jumped on that low-calorie bandwagon for a little while, but I just could not get over the no taste.
And it gives me a headache, too.
Well, you know, there's just no taste, so I'm not enjoying what I'm drinking. I want to be able to taste what I'm drinking, which is always the case with wine, and it's always a different taste if you try a different type, unless you're drinking the same wine every night.
No more shots anymore?
You know, not typically. And after work, and like I said, my drinking or my wine window is really small. I'm not typically reaching for a vodka soda at the end of the day at work. You know, I want to just have a glass or two, but enjoy the glass or two that I'm drinking after work when I'm watching the news or whatever I'm watching at night. Yeah, so I do primarily drink wine. Even when I go to the beach, I was a very Prosecco at the beach, which is still wine, drinker. And, you know.
Do you drink Prosecco and Aperol?
I do. We were just talking about Aperol spritzes earlier before we started recording, but I do like that. However, harder to make Aperol spritz at the beach is more bottles you have to bring.
Yeah.
But
and ice.
Yeah. You know, as well. But even at the beach, I do start seeking out wines that are portable to the beach, which there's a lot now with the cans and all of those
No can.
things. Oh, okay.
No
can
can.
is no can because I was
No
going
can.
to ask
No,
you
I'm
about
joking. I'm joking. I'm
the
just
can.
joking. No can.
Well, maybe we can table this for later. This
I'm
question.
just joking. I don't. I'm not familiar with canned wine, so I can't speak on that. But I'm sure it can be good.
So
yeah.
So you have gone in and gotten a bunch of our wines of the week that we recommended, and besides the Vino Verde, what other ones did you enjoy? Did you find yourself enjoying?
I really liked the Ancient Peaks cab. And I was saying earlier, you know, I've had Ancient Peaks before. I've been to Vino a bunch of times. I've had it there. I've had it on board, although it tastes different on an airplane.
Well, that's a different wine too.
Oh, right. It's not the cab.
Yeah. It's their private. It's your guys.
I blend it. I blend the Hawaiian Airlines first class wine. I blend those wines specifically, exclusively for Hawaiian Airlines.
So it's more drinkable on board.
It's more elegant. It's more suave. It's more delicious like this. It's just, you know, very well textured.
So I actually really enjoyed the Ancient Peaks. And I actually, the latest time that I bought it and drank it was I drank it at the beach.
Ancient Peaks?
Yes. Not during the day, in the heat of the day kind of beach, you know, but it was a sunset and it, you know, it was outside and it was actually, it's a nice, it was good. And yeah, and I'd say that and the Parts and Labor are the only other two wines that I've tried.
You opened the Beaujolais, didn't you? No?
Not because of the podcast, but you know, I've had it before.
Okay, so this wine, just to let you know, when you look at the label, oops, Grolleau is the grape variety.
What is it?
Grolleau.
Oh, Grolleau.
So Grolleau, you didn't see too often in the United States, because it's indigenous to the Loire Valley of France, but it's got this earthy stemminess that is not everybody likes it. So it's not
Earthy stemminess
widely
being the
appealable.
barnyard.
Partly, but part of the barnyard smell is because this thing is more naturally made, so they don't add sulfur. So that's why it has these funky characteristics, because it's not so cleanly, scientifically made. But Grolleau is a grape, and it's now getting a resurgence. So you see a renaissance of Grolleaus coming out of the Loire Valley today, not only red, but more specifically in the rosé form. I prefer Grolleau to the Pinot Noirs that are being grown in this same area. This is from the Nantes area, which is Loire Valley closest to the Atlantic Ocean. It empties into the Atlantic Ocean. Right there is called Nantes. So it's one of the cooler growing areas, hence the color. You know, it's a very cool growing area with a lot of marine influenced soil because it's so close to the Atlantic Ocean. And therefore, it takes a long time to ripen. And that's why you have this amazing lightness and buoyancy in the wine.
And
There's no heaviness, there's no thickness to this wine. It's light and airy and minerally because it's those marine influenced soils right by the cool cut by the Atlantic Ocean. That's what this wine is
So
about.
sort of low level, not at a high altitude is what's driving.
No, it's not that. It's just that it's cooler.
Oh,
So
cooler,
as I
cooler
had
climate.
talked about in a different podcast, as a wine grower, the main thing I'm going to focus on is what's called physiological maturity. Okay? That's not sugar ripeness. It's physiological maturity. They're two separate things. The way that it works simply, when sugar ripeness happens fast, the grapes don't hang on the vines as long, you have less physiological maturity.
So that being where it's hotter.
So yes, so
Yeah.
most people will say that if you can somehow find ways to delay sugar ripeness, slow it down, the grapes can hang on the vine longer, so you have more and more physiological maturity in the grapes. So how do you slow down sugar ripeness? Well, sugar ripeness, by the way, is part of physiological maturity, but it's the one that typically happens first. So 90 to 100 degrees, lots of sunshine. You have you have brown fertile soil. It's flat. You know, all of these factors.
Perfect conditions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or optimal conditions.
So that's
Okay.
when you have sugar ripeness happening fast. So in order to slow it down, you got to do everything opposite. So hillside vineyards instead of flat vineyards, where shallow top soil and there's rock underneath. That's not a fertile soil. When it rains, the water slides down the rock underneath. You have the wind pounding these vineyards because they're on a hillside. The difference in temperature between down here and up on Tantalus is, they say, 8 degrees at night. So all these factors slows down the sugar ripeness. You have direct sun half the day, indirect sun the other half the day. All these factors slows down the sugar ripeness.
And what's the advantage in that? Sorry, I interrupted.
Because you're getting more physiological maturity. You're slowing down the sugar ripeness.
The
So the
grape
grapes
is
can
staying
hang
on
on
the-
the
yeah.
vine still.
And that
you get more
equates to what in
more complex
the
and more
taste?
like okay. So the best way I can explain this so you understand better is that so I worked in pineapple fields for a long time. So especially on Maui for
Growing
6
up.
summers.
Okay.
My parents made me work in the pineapple fields.
You did pineapple pickers.
I did for 2 years. And then I worked in a cannery 2 years, and I drove pineapple truck on Maui for 6 years. And so my parents just wanted me to understand the value of money. Okay, so if you go to the Kapalua plantation, where the best pineapples are from, is up on top in the mountains, above Kapalua. And there was a 6 to 8 week difference in ripeness from down below, where it was flatter by the ocean, to the ones up on top. So that means that the ones on top had 6 to 8 weeks longer developing more physiological maturity than the sunshine-drenched ripe ones down below. So when locals had to pick pineapples, they went up there because those pineapples were more than just sugary sweet. So even when you go to the supermarkets and stuff, if you look, there's all these, what's the word? It's not only genetically modified, but it's, you know, they select certain strains of pineapple or
that are
apples or
Breeding
what it
it,
get,
Yeah.
that are low acid. Therefore, you think it's sweeter. But when you taste it, there's no dimension to it. So when you taste Uncle Frankie's pineapple, God, man, there's so much flavor in there that's not beyond sugar. That's because it has physiological maturity. You know, that's the difference. That's the
Maybe
only
the
way I can
difference
describe it.
between like tomatoes, vine ripened and non-vine ripened. You
Okay.
know?
To a certain degree, but that even that's different. But yeah, it applies to a certain degree. It's just sugar ripeness is one of the facets of a grape ripening. So when it happens fast, that means the acids and everything else have not had a chance to fully ripen.
To
So you're
develop.
not getting a full flavored, complete flavored grape. That's the best way I can describe it to you.
No, that's the perfect.
So because this thing is so close to the Atlantic Ocean, as you know, the Atlantic Ocean is so cold. So the wind coming, gusting in through that cut right there in the hills, it's the first sub-region of the Loire Valley. So it's very cold. You have all these marine soils, which means, think about things over there by the ocean. Do things grow well by the ocean? No.
No, only
You know why?
Naupaka.
Yeah, you know why? Because it's a low nutrient soil and doesn't hold water.
Oh,
So
right.
that's an example of a meager soil as opposed to brown fertile soil. So think about limestone. When you lime a baseball field or a soccer field, what happens to grass there? It don't grow. So limestone is an example of a meager soil versus brown fertile soil. So this, because this thing's so close to the ocean, it has all these marine soils like sand and limestone and things like that. So it doesn't get, it's not brown or fertile. And you have the cold air coming in. So that's why you look at the lightness and the buoyancy of this wine. You know, it's not thick, it's not viscous, you know, and that can come from cool growing areas and lighter soils and, of course, winemaking, but you get the picture. So this comes from Nantes or thereabout in the Loire Valley. And just to give you some history on that, just so you guys understand, Loire Valley is where Joan of Arc did her crusades.
Oh.
So lots of history. Lots of history. You know, it's not something like California, 1971, where
Is
it
that
really
where Da
boomed.
Vinci's buried too?
Yeah, that's where Da Vinci is
Oh,
buried. Yeah,
that's a
Leonardo
nice,
da Vinci. Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
So
So
it was the epicenter of French culture before they built the Palace of Versailles.
Okay.
So all the royalty used to come down there. That's why you see all these chateaus and everything down there. So this is the extreme part that nobody wanted anything to do with. This is like the country, like, lesser desired than the center
Nantes?
part. Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so this comes from there. This is very sandy kind of soils and marine influence. This wine is totally organic and biodynamically farmed. And so it's supernatural, even in their winemaking. The Breton, this is the Bretons, Pierre and Catherine Breton. They are one of the real champions of biodynamic and very natural winemaking before it became fashionable. This is they. And that's why you get this kind of wild and funky smell, because it's not, you know, the best way I can describe that to you so you better understand. You look at American-made cheeses, it smells like cheese. It's benign. There's no, you smell.
There's no character.
Yeah,
Well, there's
you
nothing
smell,
that really stands out,
Yeah.
like really.
yeah, when you taste it, it tastes creamy or cheesy or something. But when you smell some of the poisse from France, you go, "Whoa! I ain't eating that stuff," because it's unpasteurized.
It's raw, natural.
It's raw, man. And so this wine is like that. This is what I am, man. You know, this is who I want to be.
But why does it still taste so even? Like
Yeah.
it.
That's the winemaking. These people.
You smell it, right? Like it smells funky. It looks funky even. It's very translucent, but yeah, it tastes good, but the funky, it's not off-putting.
You only
as
get a
one would
little bit
think.
of that funk on the
Yeah.
taste. Why?
Yeah, but it's
that's
not
good.
off-putting at all.
Yeah.
it certainly tastes funky. It doesn't taste like a normal sort
It's
of.
delicious, man. So
Yeah,
this
it's
thing,
really
I think was at the store for $21, I think. So that's kind of reasonable to me.
I would agree. That's very
No?
mid-range, not even a lower mid-range type of wine.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not gonna break the bank,
No.
essentially, right?
No, you probably shouldn't drink 6 bottles a week. No,
Yeah.
that's too much.
Questions on this wine, Cully?
So is the 10.5 degree alcohol a factor because it is colder in Nantes?
I'm not sure. I was surprised that this thing lists only 10.5 alcohol. It tastes like 13.5 to me. So I don't know what to make of that. I don't know why it's only 10.5, but it's there on the label. Plus or minus 1.4, right? So this thing could be essentially.
Is that the margin of error?
Yeah.
Oh.
The law
That
says.
seems like a pretty large margin of
I was
error.
thinking the same.
This thing could either be 9 or 13%, essentially.
Yeah. I think this thing is.
Well,
I
so
think it's
it is well within
13.5.
the margin of error on the high
yeah.
side of what you're tasting.
Just from tasting it, I think this is 13.5. But at the same time, I find this wine very enticing. It's very lovely and tasty.
So to break that down, how are you identifying the alcohol content? What are you tasting that's making you think?
I'm looking for the tree. This thing, the alcohol burn at the end, means that it's higher than what I think is balance. And that's okay in this case because it holds the alcohol well. You guys didn't notice the alcohol.
No, I didn't
It's
at
just
all.
me,
I was curious on that.
Well, see, I look at wines in terms of immediately whether it's good or not. But the second thing I immediately look at is what kind of foods is going to go with it. So although the alcohol is not detectable to the average palate, for me it's very detectable because it's going to affect how and where I pair this wine with.
And what would
That's
you
why I'm
pair
super
this
sensitive.
wine with? Something that has this kind of scent on the nose. What would you eat with this kind of
Like
wine?
salami and charcuterie. Not so
okay.
much cheeses, but more salami and meats and
Cured
prepared.
meats?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, I think this thing would be really good with that. I think this would really be good at lunch. I think this wine would be really good to wash down the pizzas. The very light vegetables, slightly meat pizzas. I think this thing would go well with a chicken salad with just some type of, as you guys know, I'm very different from other people when it comes to salads. I prefer just using salt, pepper, a little bit of vinegar,
And olive oil.
Oh, as a dressing.
and a little bit of olive oil. That's it. And then in the meantime, the salad mix, I like to mix in finely diced herbs. And that's what I toss very lightly with some little bit of onions. And then in this case, maybe a little bit of roast chicken on top. That's what I would have this with. And if that's the case, when I'm tossing the salad, I would take this bottle and I would just go like this and hold it down here and just go like this and sprinkle it on the salad so it gets a little bit of red wineness inside.
He does that when he's making like pasta and stuff too, or
Well,
any sauce.
That makes a lot more sense in that scenario than a salad. But I
But
never thought to do that as part of, I guess, your
Well,
dressing.
I mean, it's vinegar is converted wine.
You're right.
So I'm just using it as just part of the salad. Instead of using so much vinegar, I'm going to use some of the wine.
And he's saying that it's gonna make it way more wine friendly.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna
Because
make the
vinegar is
pairing-
not good for wine pairings. You don't want vinegar in wines. You don't want the vinegar. That means there's acetic acid, which means it's gone over. It's not,
Right.
it's not.
Well, that's a good tip.
Yeah. By the way, give me a tip.
Yeah, maybe at
So
the
he's
end.
saying like when you make pasta sauce or whatever, or whenever you're gonna pair with your sauce, you want to just drizzle it in there a little bit to make the pairing even more.
Yep. That's what I do.
Copacetic.
So same thing when I'm cooking a fish or whatever. I'll use white wine, but I'll just douse it at the end after it's already been cooked, just to give it some wine flavor inside. And I'll mix it in with the jus and whatnot. And maybe add a touch of butter to bind it all. That's it. Same thing when I'm cooking meats, like the steak. When I'm grilling a steak,
Do you
just-
put in the grill
what?
wine?
No, this is what I do.
Oh, okay.
Just to give you the insight, I grill the steak and I only turn it once. You got to sear it on the outside, so in my opinion, cook it at high heat,
Right.
so that the middle stays moist. And then when the steak is sitting there, I'll take a bottle of dry vermouth and I'll just go like this on top of the steak, just a little bit, and I'll let it sit there. Oh, so ono, man.
That's what we do at Buzz's.
Dry
Vermouth?
Yeah.
Really?
Really?
With
That's
butter.
Grandpa Buzz's.
With butter.
No butter.
No butter.
Seriously?
That's Grandpa Buzz's.
Do you
old
put it in a
method.
cast iron?
It's all
after,
Chiavi
or-
wood
or
grill.
No, all just on the grill.
See, I don't like Chiavi. Chiavi's too strong.
Too smoky. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
But he does. You guys do vermouth?
On every grilled meat. yeah.
Wow, that's wild, man.
That's another
so
hot
cool.
tip.
That's so. Hey, guys, I'm telling you, you do a little bit of dry vermouth, And the one you guys should check out, actually, if you want a really interesting dry vermouth, it's called Berto, Berto.
Berto. And with
So,
the leftovers, you can make
it's so
a vodka
good.
martini.
But the Berto dry one is slightly sweet, so it's not dry.
But for a martini, you don't need much.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, because you're a
vermouth either.
bartender.
No, you're supposed to just wash.
Yeah.
Okay, so because you're a bartender, you got to read this book here.
Okay, let me write it down.
No, here, look.
Oh.
Do you still bartend, by the way?
Not at a bar, but I do on the side sometimes. I do a lot of events or like weddings.
With Carissa and stuff. Her best friend is Carissa.
No way.
Yeah.
How do you not know Missy?
I don't know. She's
Missy
not my best
Carissa.
friend.
They're best friends.
I don't know.
Okay, by the smoke and the smell.
Okay.
Hey, can you text that to her?
Yeah.
Or just use
Luke
this
has
thing?
my phone.
No, just text it from here.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, so you know who Dave Newman is?
Yeah, that
Pine and
name
Jigger?
sounds
He told me to read that book, so I started reading it the other night about spirits. How instead of all this mass brand stuff, like how I am into wines, that's how he is into spirits.
with spirits.
You gotta read this book.
Oh,
man.
I
I've only
will.
read.
I will read
I've
it.
only read the first 26 pages or something, but I'm sitting there going, he's talking the same lingo.
With alcohol or liquor. I
Yes.
guess, than
So that's why he goes to Mexico to pick out family-owned and tequilas and mezcals, and same thing in France with brandies. And he goes and finds these single estate, family-owned things like this. So he has Bar Normand in San Francisco. He's the mixologist of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
And so he has these 3 bars. And that's why he discovers, that's why he goes looking for all the same thing with the wines. And I think you would totally get off on this book.
Oh, I'll go get it on Amazon.
And did you ever read Adventures on the Wine Route?
I have not.
You have to read that.
Okay.
Adventures on the Wine Route by Kermit Lynch.
Okay.
It's easy reading, just like this other book, but it's fascinating. It's about culture. It's about what would you say? It's about Adventures on the Wine Route.
It's about his aha moment, I would say. It's like his first experience of going to wine country in old world wine country, and I don't know the term, like him experiencing that people buy barrels of juice and ferment it themselves, and then there's like estate grown wine, and he's like dissecting that whole his experience on that, it just opened his eyes to this is unless you experience it, it's hard to explain that it's their way of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's not just there's a winery here. It's like there's wine everywhere.
So it's like his diary through wine country. It's not hard reading. It's just like today I got up and I met Gaston, and Gaston, and he
travels through wine country in a lot of different areas.
France.
Oh, just France.
Yeah.
You'll find it interesting. He wrote this book 30 years ago or something. I read this book once a year but I haven't recently because someone stole my book.
Ah, Kale.
I have the autograph copy. I'm gonna auction it.
Wow,
Keep
whatever.
reposting this podcast. You could potentially win. Nah.
It'll be like a giveaway soon on the Instagram.
Luke's not laughing. And Chris is shaking his head. So there you go.
He's gonna send you 5 more signed books shortly.
Right on. Girlfriend, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on and sharing all your insights, your passion. It's like the last episode. I feel this is exactly, what I was hoping this podcast to be about. It's just hanging out, talking story, see what you like, what you don't like, insights and everything. I think this is wonderful. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank
sharing
you.
with us.
You have
Thanks
a closing
for having
statement
me.
at all?
Well, I just think that even though you don't you don't plan on doing anything with the information, I think just for you to be able to know what kind of wine you like and what you enjoy drinking, and then being able to articulate that at a restaurant or at a bar or when you're buying your own wine, I think there's a lot of value in that because it really is for your enjoyment and for others around you that may need a tip or may have the same sort of similar taste as you.
This guest Ariana that we had puts it as like, if you're gonna shop local and go to farmers markets and care about what kind of produce restaurants are using, wouldn't you want to do that with wine as well?
Yeah.
So instead
true.
of drinking big commercial brands.
Right, and
Yeah.
supporting the
little
target
guys,
of
yeah.
wine, you're sort
Well,
of
I think the other thing too is that it can help you gauge,
right.
where you're eating at or where you're buying your wine at. You can just go in there and say, by the way, do you happen to have any Grolleau? And you can see on their face whether they have any or they even know what that means.
I mean, I must say that's the first time I've heard of that varietal.
Well, I'm just saying though, it can help you, whether it's Malbec,
Right.
Cahors. If they don't know that Cahors is Malbec, then maybe they're not carrying the kind of wines necessary that you're looking for.
That's true.
It can help you. It gives you lingo to be able to communicate to the restaurant or the store what it is that you're looking for. Right?
Right.
That's the main thing. Cully,
Good.
anything?
Nope. That was perfect.
So thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. To all of you, thank you for joining us on this episode. We hope you join us again next week. Until then, on behalf of these two, we say aloha.